A veces nuestras decisiones o las de nuestros padres nos llevan a lugares a donde pensamos nunca estaríamos. Podemos nacer y terminar siendo parte de un grupo sin decidirlo, o simplemente tomamos esa decisión siendo conscientes para ser parte de algo. Pero como dije, hay unos que no tienen una decisión propia. Solo hasta que crecen y se dan cuenta de algunas cosas no muy buenas de estos lugares, deciden escapar. Es por eso que hoy hablaremos con un ex miembro de un culto.
My name is Faith Yen. I was born and raised in the Moonies Cult, also called the Unification Church.
Can you tell us that there's so many people that probably have no idea what are the Moonies? So can you tell me what are they?
So the Moonies became famous in the United States in the 60s or 70s. They were trained to worship Reverend Moon from South Korea. According to Reverend Moon, he saw a vision from Jesus Christ when he was 16 years old. And Jesus told him that the Bible is wrong. He was not intended to die. He was supposed to stay alive and get married and have children. So Jesus wanted Reverend Moon to be the second coming of Christ and save humanity while also getting married and having kids and showing the world what an ideal family looks like. In reality, Reverend Moon was actually kicked out of a sex cult in South Korea. He tells his church members that he was arrested by North Korean communists for practicing religion, and that he spent a bunch of time in a prison camp, and that's why you have to respect him because he's been through so much for you. He uses that as proof that he's the Messiah. In reality, his wife and his neighbors and all of his friends kicked him out of a church for having sex with other people's wives and for believing a lot of really inappropriate things. And he was arrested by local South Korean police for essentially being disgusting and touching people inappropriately and all that kind of stuff. The church now has several $billion in its US church alone, another $1 billion in South Korea. He's got locations everywhere. He's dead now, but the church is still active and there are still thousands of Unification Church members who worship him.
How it all began for you? Like how long you've been there? Well, you were there. How was it?
Well, my parents were the ones who were recruited when they were in their early 20s. So they only know each other because Reverend Moon told them to get married to each other. Reverend Moon does arranged marriages and mass weddings. So my parents both flew to New York and got married to each other without really knowing each other at all. And they only agreed to have kids because Reverend Moon told them that that's what they had to do. So me and my siblings were born into the church. There's actually second gen and third generation Unification Church members, or Moonies. So I've been in the church for about 25 years. I'm almost 30 now, and I've been sort of slowly extracting myself. I would say I've officially been out of it and thinking of myself as an independent person for about 2 years.
That must be very hard for you. And how you stayed there 25 years, right? What was it that you started thinking like, I don't belong here? What was your thoughts at that moment?
You know, it happened slowly. And I realized very young, like around 16 years old when I was still in high school, that my parents were not safe and my parents didn't make decisions like other people's parents. So even in high school, I would go on the computer when my parents obviously weren't around and start Googling like how to legally emancipate myself from my family. Like, what are my options? How can I move out? And so I depended on the cult to get away from my parents. And then the more time I spent with the cult outside of high school, the more I started to realize like I'm not really comfortable here either. So it happened in layers. I think the biggest catalyst for me though was when Reverend Moon died in about 2013, and the daughter that he put in charge of the American chapter of the church, she had an affair with somebody that she hired to play music. And she had a child with him and was using church money to build another house for her and her illegitimate baby. All the while she was telling everybody that you have to stay loyal to your spouse and this is how you have a perfect family. And somebody found the birth certificate of her illegitimate child and put it on the internet because they were tired of her lies. So that really broke my faith in the Moon family forever.
And your family's still there, or you're the only one out?
I'm the only one out, yeah. I mean, my siblings don't go to church anymore, but they still very much act like Moonies. It's interesting. There are a lot of people who might stop bowing to Reverend Moon's picture, but they still act like him and talk like him and still hang out with only cult member friends. So in my family, I'm the only one who is trying very hard to think differently.
And now that you talk about people that act like Moonies, how do they act? They have like certain things that you can tell, like he's a Moonie or she's a Moonie.
I think one of the most obvious ones is being very sexist, but insisting that you're not sexist. Just a lot of gaslighting in everyday conversations, a lot of just not believing that women can hold a good job or drive very safely or understand what they're talking about ever, but then insisting that men and women are equal in the eyes of God. You're just following science and nature when you insult women on a regular basis. And then the other thing is just not believing that anything was wrong with the church, that the church wasn't abusive at all. When the opposite is true, like most people who wake up and leave end up having post-traumatic stress disorder and needing many years of therapy just to feel safe in their body.
There's things that you still agree of this, and what other things you don't agree of the church?
I think in terms of what was in the church's book, there's almost nothing that I agree with, but there were, as much as I hate to say it, there were good parts about being in the community, like good food, like lots of outdoor activities, like lots of singing, like a lot of sharing about your life with other people and them hugging you afterwards. Like those are, I think, honestly, those are things that I wouldn't have had in my neighborhood if I hadn't been raised in the church. So I'm grateful for those parts. But everything else, just about men being superior, about World War III happening, about my blood being different from everybody else's, and like me having to be the savior of mankind. I don't mess with any of that.
Oh my God. Okay. How is a day in the cult?
A day in the life?
Yeah.
The cult really changed depending on Reverend Moon's desires. So in the beginning, like for my parents, they absolutely could not talk to any outsiders unless they were fundraising or recruiting. So for my parents, they lived on compounds in the middle of nowhere, and it was just singing, lectures, fundraising, singing, chores, lectures. And for children like us, when Reverend Moon already had all the money he needed to live in a mansion and fly on private jets and everything, we still had lectures and songs, but we went to outside schools if our parents couldn't homeschool us. And we had to talk to outside people to like go to the doctor and just blend in with society. So today, an average day in the life for like a second generation or third generation Moonie, they're going to church every Sunday and probably a couple of times throughout the week. They are not allowed to be close friends with anyone who is not a Moonie, and they literally believe that they are biologically different. And that if they spend time at their friend's house, they're going to be polluted. So their parents sort of keep track of who they're friends with, how much time they're spending together. And if you spend too much time with outside friends, you have to do conditions to clean yourself afterwards. They're also probably making regular trips to a place called Chungpyeong in South Korea. That's like Reverend Moon's palace, but also a brainwashing center in the countryside in the mountains. Just about, it's sort of like Mecca, like you know how in Islam, everyone is supposed to make trips to Mecca. So in the Moonies, you're supposed to make trips to Chungpyeong, where you pay thousands of dollars and pay your own airfare to spend like a month or so just beating the spirits out of yourself and going to lectures and going on long hikes, lots of sleep deprivation, lots of food deprivation, very, very strict to make yourself more pure and sort of detoxify all of these bad spirits out of you.
How did you get out of this? Because this sounds crazy. So are you in danger or you're just out?
I'm safe now. I did have to spend a good chunk of time in a women's shelter in Long Beach. It was very scary trying to just find the words for what I had been taught and what I believed. I think, to be honest, it's not like they handcuff you to anything. It's not like Moonies chase you down with guns and insist that you go anywhere. Although some people's parents do that, like especially the offshoot of the cults in Pennsylvania, like they're very hostile. Well, I guess they've moved to Texas now. It's called, I forget it's like one of his sons started his own cult in Texas. Called the Rod of Iron Ministries, and that's been in Vice, so that's very intense. But when I wanted to leave, all I had to do was learn the vocabulary words for mental health things that I was going through, because the cult made me believe that if I was upset or if I was depressed or if I was hurting inside, that was proof that I'm very weak and that I'm being very selfish. So when I tried to go to therapists, I didn't know that I was in a cult. I said, I'm broken. Can you fix me? And like, I love my church family. They're so good to me, but I'm broken. I'm disgusting. And so the hardest part for me was just learning things that I hadn't been allowed to learn. That took the longest. And to be honest, I don't think I had a choice to leave, because I was so depressed. I was so like, I just hated that experience. I hated the way I was being talked to. I was so tired all the time. My body started shutting down, and continuing that lifestyle was not an option for me.
Okay, and what has been the hardest things to get into the real world, kind of?
Yeah, it's just having patience with myself and understanding that what I've been through is not my fault and not an indication of who I am. I still have times where I'll like cry over the sink because I realize like there's so much I don't know about taxes. There's so much I don't know about just being like, I was being prepared to get in an arranged marriage and just be somebody else's housewife. So it sort of hurts my self-esteem that I was deliberately held back from learning all of these things that so many people take for granted. But I'm very excited and very grateful to be in college now. I'm grateful to have YouTube. YouTube honestly saved my life in so many ways, like taught me so many things about how other people think, how things in the world really work. Yeah, I think just the hardest thing is comparing myself to people who have had a lot more opportunities than me and don't even know it. And sometimes they look at me and they think the reason I don't know how to do makeup or do my hair or do these other things is because I'm stupid or because, you know, whatever it is. So I just find people who understand what it's like to come from a different background. I find that I get along very well, very quickly with people from other countries, honestly, and people who have been adoptees, people who have been refugees, like they kind of get it. People who have had housing instability, like I get along the most with those people.
Just to let you know, like, I don't know how to do taxes neither, so we hire people for that, so don't feel bad. There's a lot of ways you can learn how to do makeup. I think that's things that we deal with too. Maybe you have a different perspective because people thought like you were wrong, you're not doing this right, but I feel like everyone goes through those things in real life too. And now, what's your perspective of God?
You know, I personally reject the idea that God is a man or that God acts like a human being and needs human beings to worship him in order to love them back. I reject the idea that some people go to heaven and some people go and are tortured forever and God is okay with that. But I definitely do believe that there's more to what meets the eye. I like learning about, you know, I like meditating. I like learning about quantum physics, about manifesting what you want in your life by living in that emotion first. And I do believe that everybody sort of comes from the same place and is going to the same place.
What is the biggest lesson you learned from this life you had?
I think the biggest lesson is that I am the biggest authority in my life. Nobody can tell me who I am. Nobody can tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about when I feel it very strongly. And also it's never too late to start over and start going for exactly what I want.
There's any situation that you remember specifically that was horrible for you, or you just don't want to remember anymore?
There are too many of those to count. I think I have more of those than I have good memories. And every day I'll read something or I'll talk to my therapist and I'll suddenly realize like, oh no, like that happened. Or I think honestly, like my brain protects me by hiding some memories. And the longer I stay in therapy and the safer I feel, the more things I start to remember. I think the scariest moments was when I felt very trapped in different situations. And so I learned to dissociate out of that situation, but also almost like out of my body. And I think there was a moment when I was like 13 where I almost literally left my body, like almost astral projected, and could see myself from a bird's eye view. Just feeling myself leave my body was kind of scary. And I just finished, on my YouTube channel, I finished reading a book about Moonies, and they talk about in the book, they talk about that happening to people as well. And I'm very grateful I read that because I thought I was the only one who like almost astral projected. But that was something that they tried to get you to do. And whenever you go to Chungpyeong as a Moonie, when they trap you in rooms and tell you to hit yourself for hours during Ansu and just chant and chant and chant, they're trying to get you to leave your body. They're trying to get you to sort of dissociate and float above what's going on so that you don't try to change the situation or feel empowered in any way.
Wow, that's crazy. Oh my God. So what do you want to do with your life now?
Right now I'm having a lot of fun in school studying anthropology and business. Anthropology especially is like the study of human diversity and the study of religions. And I've been told so many times by teachers and classmates that I have a very unique perspective to bring to that field. So I'm also just taking it very slow, and I don't set a lot of long-term expectations. I think the pandemic taught all of us that it's like very hard to make 5-year plans and 10-year plans when the world is going to do whatever the world wants. But I definitely, no matter what I do, I always want to make room in my life to be an advocate, to raise awareness for cults and coercive control. Because believe it or not, there are people who have never been in a cult who don't want to believe that cults are real. They just want to believe it's a TV show theme, that it's like watching a movie, like this doesn't really happen. And if it did happen, the SWAT team would come in and save everyone, but they don't. So it's very important to me to sort of show people what it's really like to be in these situations.
And you wanted to get married now, or what is your perspective of this? Because that's insane.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out how I feel about marriage and children after being in a cult that sort of forced that on us in a very abusive, unhealthy way. I just finished reading a book by the same lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, called Committed, and she talks a lot about different marriage traditions. I think I would get married as long as I feel safe. I think I'm realizing that more than anything, I just need to feel safe and respected by the people in my life. And I feel like I can do anything if I have people like that around me.
You miss your family, or?
To be honest, no. And a big part of the reason is because the cult, the Moonies, they teach you that Reverend Moon and his wife are your true parents. And they teach you that the other people in the cult are your true family. And they do that because in case anybody in your family leaves the cult and tries to get you to come with them, you'll have the excuse of like, well, you're not my real family. You're not my true family. So there were a lot of times, so example, like my father is an alcoholic and my mother also has different like mental disorders. If they were too tired to drive us to school, they'd say, go talk to your other parents, go talk to I was sort of raised by a village. So I miss other people's parents who drove me to school and like taught me different things that my parents never taught me. I miss the village that raised me, but I don't have a very deep relationship with my biological parents or my biological family.
Oh my God, that's insane. Okay, so thank you so much for this interview. Now you have this space for you to promote your social media, anything you want.
Thanks. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. My name is Faith Yen. I use a 3 instead of an E.
Aquí fue la prueba de que a veces no podemos tomar decisiones desde que nacemos, pero sí podemos tomarlas a medida que vamos adquiriendo un poco de conciencia. No quiere decir que todas las organizaciones sean malas o equivocadas, pues les sirven a las personas de una forma u otra. Sin embargo, siempre antes de entrar, pregúntate bien, ¿esto me aporta en mi vida y en la de los demás?